Are you afraid of the unknown? Do you hesitate to take on challenges because the fear of failure looms over you? What if I told you that fear, yes? The same emotion you try to avoid could be the key to unlocking your true potential and driving intellectual growth. In today's video, we're going to dive into something that most of us have experienced at one point or another, yet we don't always know how to handle: fear. But not just any fear. We'll be talking about how fear can actually be a catalyst for personal and intellectual transformation. Sound crazy, right? Well, stick around because by the end of this video, you'll start to see fear in a whole new light. Fear isn't just a roadblock to success, it's a signpost guiding you to something bigger and better than you ever imagined. But before we get into that, I want to ask you to do me a huge favor. If you're finding the idea of overcoming fear intriguing or challenging in your own life, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who could use a little motivation and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us grow and reach more people who can benefit from this content. And if you're feeling extra generous, don't forget to show your appreciation with a super thanks. It's a great way to support the channel and help us create even more meaningful videos like this one. Danger, or something harmful. It is common to view fear as a hindrance, an obstacle that prevents us from acting, exploring, or progressing. But what if fear, rather than a purely negative emotion, actually plays a more complicated role in human growth, particularly intellectual development? In fact, fear has the paradoxical ability to drive intellectual curiosity and push us toward growth. While it can certainly hold us back at times, it can also propel us forward, encouraging us to seek out knowledge, take risks, and confront the unknown. Fear, when harnessed correctly, becomes a powerful motivator for intellectual and personal development. Rather than seeing fear solely as a force that limits us, it is crucial to understand how it can spur our cognitive function and creativity in ways that are far from intuitive. The paradox lies in the fact that fear, by challenging us, can stimulate a thirst for understanding, making it a tool for intellectual growth. At its core, fear is an emotional response designed to protect us from danger, triggering the body's fight or flight response. This biological mechanism, which is centuries old, is hardwired into our systems. When we encounter something we perceive as a threat, our bodies prepare to respond either by fighting or fleeing. However, fear also elevates cognitive function. In moments of danger, our brains sharpen, allowing us to think quickly and make fast decisions. This heightened state of awareness doesn't only occur in response to physical threats. It can also apply to intellectual challenges. When we face the unknown, whether it's a new idea, a difficult question, or a seemingly insurmountable problem, fear has the potential to drive us to explore and seek answers. For instance, think about a time when you were confronted with a challenging question or concept, something that sparked a sense of uncertainty or discomfort. In that moment, fear might have arisen: fear of being wrong, fear of failure, or fear of not understanding. However, it was precisely this fear that motivated you to dig deeper, to seek out answers, or to challenge your own assumptions. Fear, in this case, acted as a catalyst for intellectual curiosity. It pushed you to search for knowledge and to expand your understanding, instead of letting that initial sense of uncertainty keep you from exploring further. The relationship between fear and intellectual curiosity isn't just theoretical, it's something we can observe in our daily lives and throughout history. One of the most prominent examples is the history of scientific discovery. Many great minds, from Galileo to Einstein, faced their own fears of ridicule, failure, and the unknown. Yet, it was these very fears that drove them to push the boundaries of knowledge. Galileo, for example, feared the potential consequences of challenging the established belief that the Earth was the center of the universe. Yet, it was precisely this fear that motivated him to investigate and observe, eventually leading to groundbreaking discoveries in astronomy. In a similar vein, Albert Einstein feared his theory of relativity would be rejected, But that fear didn't stop him. It spurred him to work harder, to refine his ideas, and to prove them with relentless determination. These examples show that fear, while uncomfortable, often acts as the very fuel that drives intellectual breakthroughs. This process of intellectual advancement, driven by fear, is not limited to scientists or philosophers. In everyday life, people face moments when they are forced to confront the unknown, whether in the classroom, at work, or in personal situations. A student who is afraid of public speaking, for example, may initially freeze up at the thought of presenting in front of others. But over time, this fear can prompt them to practice, to prepare more thoroughly, and to gradually overcome their anxiety. What begins as a source of fear becomes a challenge that the person tackles head-on, pushing their own intellectual and emotional boundaries. Similarly, in the workplace, fear often plays a role in innovation. Entrepreneurs, for instance, may fear the possibility of failure, the fear of losing money, or the fear of being criticized. However, it is this very fear that encourages them to think outside the box, to take calculated risks, and to innovate. Without the pressure of fear, there might be little motivation to create something new or to improve upon existing ideas. Fear pushes us to be better, to think smarter, and to work harder. The technology sector, for example, thrives on innovation driven by fear of becoming obsolete. Companies like Apple, Google, and Tesla all continue to evolve because they are motivated by the fear of falling behind their competitors, which pushes them to develop new products and ideas that shape the future. The paradox, then, is that while fear can sometimes paralyze us, it can also fuel our progress. It can challenge our complacency, forcing us to move out of our comfort zones. Fear is not inherently bad or debilitating. Rather, it can be a powerful force for intellectual and personal growth. The key lies in how we respond to fear. We can choose to retreat in the face of it, allowing it to limit our intellectual exploration. Or we can embrace it, using it as a driving force to propel us forward. This dynamic between fear and growth isn't just a matter of theory, it's part of our evolutionary makeup. Fear has been essential to the survival of the human species, encouraging us to adapt, innovate, and overcome challenges. Historically, when humans encounter dangers, whether from wild animals or changing environments, fear pushed them to develop new skills, tools, and strategies for survival. In much the same way, the intellectual evolution of humankind has been shaped by the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, and the fear of stagnation. These fears have pushed humanity to reach higher, to think critically, and to explore new frontiers in every field of knowledge. Today, we can continue to use this ancient survival mechanism to our advantage. Whether it's advancing our careers, improving our personal lives, or seeking new intellectual challenges, fear can be a powerful motivator. The key is to reframe how we think about fear. Rather than seeing it as a negative force to be avoided, we can recognize it as a signal that something important is at stake. When we feel fear, we are likely on the cusp of growth, intellectual, emotional, or even physical. The most successful people, thinkers, and innovators in history didn't shy away from fear. They recognized it as an invitation to push boundaries, to think more deeply, and to rise above the challenges that lay before them. Fear, when understood and embraced, can become a source of great intellectual power. It is not merely a reaction to danger, but a call to action. It prompts us to explore the unknown, to question our assumptions, and to challenge the limits of what we know. Fear may be uncomfortable, but it is this discomfort that drives us to grow, to learn, and to achieve. Far from holding us back, fear can actually push us to reach new heights of understanding and personal development. Fear, in its rawest form, is often perceived as something negative, an emotion to be avoided, suppressed, or minimized. However, when examined more closely, fear reveals itself as a powerful and complex force that has the potential to propel intellectual growth. While fear can certainly have a debilitating effect in certain situations, It can also serve as a motivator, urging us to confront challenges, seek knowledge, and push the boundaries of our understanding. At its core, fear is a survival mechanism, one that has evolved to protect us from harm, but it also has profound effects on our cognitive function. In fact, fear can drive us to think more deeply, explore new ideas, and innovate in ways that we might never have considered without it. The concept of the fight or flight response is integral to understanding how fear influences our cognitive processes. This is a primal reaction that dates back to our ancestors, designed to ensure survival in the face of danger. When confronted with a threat, the body responds by releasing a surge of hormones, such as adrenaline, which prepare the body for immediate action. This physiological response is accompanied by a heightened state of alertness, where the senses become sharper and the brain becomes hyper-focused. In this state, we are more likely to make quick decisions, think more clearly, and act decisively. Although the fight or flight response was initially designed to help humans survive physical threats, such as a predator or environmental danger, it also plays a significant role in intellectual and emotional responses to challenges that we encounter in daily life. When we face intellectual challenges, fear often arises, particularly when we are confronted with something new, difficult, or unknown. It could be the fear of failure when trying a new skill, the fear of being wrong when presenting an idea, or the fear of not understanding a complex concept. These feelings of fear can trigger the same physiological responses that we experience during physical danger, prompting us to act, adapt, and evolve. In this way, fear becomes a driving force for intellectual curiosity and growth. One of the ways fear spurs intellectual growth is by forcing us to engage with the unknown. The discomfort and uncertainty that accompany fear often serve as signals that there is something worth exploring or learning. Fear can be seen as a prompt to signal that we are about to venture into uncharted territory, and in doing so, we have the potential to learn something valuable. For instance, when we're confronted with a problem or a question that seems difficult to solve, the fear of failure can motivate us to seek out information, ask questions, and try different approaches until we find a solution. Fear pushes us to move beyond the surface level and dive deeper into the complexities of the issue at hand. Without this fear, we might remain complacent, never feeling the need to explore or challenge ourselves. Consider the example of inventors and entrepreneurs. Many of the greatest inventions and business successes were born out of fear of failure, fear of competition, or fear of the status quo remaining unchanged. The Wright brothers, for example, feared that humanity's ability to travel long distances would remain limited unless they found a way to fly. This fear drove them to study aerodynamics, experiment with flight mechanics, and ultimately create the first successful airplane. Similarly, Thomas Edison feared that the world would never have an efficient light source unless he developed a practical incandescent bulb. His fear of being left behind in the race to provide solutions for the world's growing needs led to the development of one of the most important inventions in history. These inventors didn't let fear paralyze them. They used it as a catalyst for intellectual and technological innovation. In the world of business, fear is often a powerful motivator. Entrepreneurs regularly face fears of failure, financial ruin, or market competition. But rather than retreating from these fears, many successful entrepreneurs embrace them as opportunities for growth. Fear of being outpaced by competitors or failing to meet consumer demands encourages businesses to innovate constantly, refine their products, and stay ahead of trends. Companies like Apple and Tesla, for example, thrive on the fear of being outdone by their competitors. This fear pushes them to constantly innovate, improve their technologies, and find new solutions to emerging problems. Fear of being obsolete or irrelevant drives them to take risks, invest in research and development, and ultimately revolutionize industries. Similarly, in the world of academia, fear can drive intellectual growth. Students and researchers often fear the unknown when faced with challenging material. But this fear often sparks a desire to understand and master the subject at hand. Consider the way that students approach challenging exams. While many may feel anxious or fearful before a test, this fear often drives them to study harder, seek out additional resources, and engage in deep reflection about the material. Fear of failing the exam forces them to confront their weaknesses and improve upon their understanding of the subject. In this sense, fear acts as a motivating force that leads to intellectual development. This principle is not limited to individual instances of intellectual growth. It also applies to broader cultural and societal advancements. Throughout history, fear has been a driving force behind some of the most significant intellectual movements. The fear of societal stagnation or being left behind has inspired cultural revolutions, scientific discoveries, and philosophical shifts. The Renaissance, for example, was fueled by a collective fear that human knowledge and creativity were being stifled by rigid religious doctrines. The intellectuals of the time, including Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, embraced this fear and used it to fuel a period of unprecedented cultural and intellectual growth. This period of intellectual exploration was driven by a collective desire to push beyond traditional boundaries and discover new ways of thinking, creating, and understanding the world. Even in modern times, fear continues to play a central role in driving intellectual development. In the field of technology, for instance, the fear of missing out on new advancements or being outpaced by competitors drives innovation at an incredible pace. The rapid development of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and renewable energy technologies is largely motivated by the fear of environmental collapse, economic disruption, and technological stagnation. This fear has spurred research and development in these fields, leading to breakthroughs that were once thought impossible. Moreover, fear can also lead to innovation in social and political spheres. Social movements, for example, are often driven by the fear of injustice, inequality, or the suppression of rights. This fear motivates individuals and groups to challenge the status quo, demand change, and push for reform. The civil rights movement in the United States was fueled by a collective fear of continued racial injustice and inequality. Fear of living in a society that perpetuates discrimination and oppression drove individuals like Martin Luther King Jr. to speak out, organize, and fight for equality. Similarly, the feminist movements, environmental movements, and LGBTQ+ rights movements have all been driven by the fear of oppression, inequality, and discrimination, and these movements have led to significant social, cultural, and intellectual progress. In all of these examples, fear serves not as a hindrance, but as a driving force that propels individuals and societies toward greater intellectual and social achievements. The fear of failure, the fear of being left behind, the fear of injustice, all of these fears can push people to think more critically, act more decisively, and innovate more creatively. Fear, in this sense, acts as a catalyst for growth, compelling us to confront challenges head-on and to push the limits of what we know and understand. When fear is embraced as a motivator rather than resisted, it opens the door to new opportunities for learning, discovery, and innovation. It forces us to ask questions, seek answers, and never settle for complacency. In this way, fear can be viewed not as something that limits us, but as something that drives us forward, urging us to expand our intellectual and creative horizons. Fear, when harnessed correctly, becomes a powerful tool that propels us toward greater understanding, achievement, and growth. Fear, while often celebrated as a motivator for intellectual growth, can also have a darker side, one that serves to limit our potential and restricts our ability to think critically and explore new ideas. Although fear can spur us to action and challenge us to move forward, it can equally paralyze us, keeping us trapped within the confines of our comfort zone and inhibiting creativity, critical thinking, and intellectual freedom. When fear becomes chronic, it affects not only our emotional state, but also our cognitive processes, causing us to make decisions based on bias and prejudice rather than rational thought. This section explores how fear can act as a barrier to intellectual exploration, preventing us from embracing new ideas, challenging old beliefs, and pursuing innovative thinking. One of the primary ways fear limits intellectual exploration is by creating a resistance to failure. Failure, while often viewed as a necessary part of learning, can be one of the greatest sources of fear for many individuals. The fear of failure causes people to avoid risk, stick to familiar paths, and refuse to take on challenges that might push them outside their comfort zone. This fear can be especially limiting in intellectual pursuits, where exploration of new ideas often involves uncertainty and the potential for failure. When we are afraid of failing, we become less likely to experiment, take intellectual risks, or venture into uncharted territory. Instead, we may cling to familiar concepts and theories, even when they no longer serve us or the problems we're trying to solve. The fear of failure can manifest in various ways, from procrastination to perfectionism. For example, a student may avoid starting a challenging research project because they fear that they won't be able to produce a perfect paper or might fail to meet their professor's expectations. Instead of engaging with the material and learning through the process, the student becomes paralyzed by the potential for failure, leading to procrastination and a lack of progress. This fear-driven avoidance of failure can stunt intellectual growth, as it prevents individuals from taking the necessary steps to expand their knowledge and understanding. Similarly, the fear of being wrong can also prevent us from embracing new ideas and challenging our own beliefs. Cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that arises when we hold two contradictory beliefs or when our beliefs are challenged, can cause people to reject new information or ideas that conflict with their existing worldview. This fear of being wrong often leads to rigid thinking, where individuals become unwilling to entertain opposing viewpoints or consider alternative solutions. Instead of approaching new ideas with an open mind and a willingness to learn, people may shut themselves off from intellectual growth, clinging to outdated beliefs simply to avoid the discomfort of being proven wrong. Take, for example, the case of people who deny climate change despite overwhelming scientific evidence supporting it. Many of these individuals may have a deep-seated fear of accepting the truth because it conflicts with their political or personal beliefs. The fear of admitting that they were wrong, or the fear of facing the implications of such knowledge, leads them to resist the evidence, even when it is clear. This resistance to change, fueled by fear, prevents intellectual progress and hampers the ability to make informed decisions about the future. Fear-driven biases and prejudices also play a significant role in limiting intellectual exploration. When we allow fear to influence our thinking, it can cause us to view the world through a narrow lens, shaped by our preconceived notions and stereotypes. These biases can prevent us from understanding new perspectives, embracing diversity of thought, and engaging with ideas that challenge our beliefs. In this way, fear can create intellectual stagnation, where we are unable or unwilling to see beyond our own biases and limited viewpoints. One of the most harmful consequences of fear-driven biases is the perpetuation of discrimination and inequality. Fear of the other, whether it's based on race, gender, culture, or ideology, can lead to the marginalization of entire groups of people. When fear influences our thinking, it can lead to unjust treatment, as we are more likely to make assumptions about others based on superficial characteristics, rather than engaging with them on a deeper level. This fear-based prejudice prevents the exchange of ideas and stifles intellectual diversity. In a society where fear-driven biases are prevalent, intellectual growth becomes stunted, as people are less likely to engage in open-minded discussions and are instead caught up in their own fears and assumptions. A clear example of how fear-based prejudice can limit intellectual exploration is the history of racial segregation in the United States. For much of the nation's history, fear of racial differences led to the oppression and marginalization of African Americans. This fear-based prejudice was not just a social issue, but also an intellectual one, as it prevented people from questioning the validity of racial stereotypes and exploring the inherent equality of all people. Fear of change, fear of losing power, and fear of the unknown all contributed to a system that stifled intellectual exploration and denied the possibility of a more just society. It wasn't until individuals and movements began to confront these fears head-on by challenging discriminatory laws and fighting for civil rights that intellectual and societal progress was made. The fear of the unknown is another powerful force that limits intellectual exploration. When we encounter something new or unfamiliar, it often triggers feelings of anxiety and apprehension. This fear of the unknown can cause us to avoid new ideas, new experiences, and new challenges simply because they feel threatening. This is especially true in academic settings, where students and professionals alike may shy away from exploring novel concepts or questioning established norms. The fear of venturing into new intellectual territory can result in stagnation, as individuals remain anchored in the comfort of what is familiar rather than embracing the possibility of growth. A prime example of this fear-driven resistance to the unknown can be seen in the reluctance of some people to accept scientific advancements. For instance, when the theory of evolution was first proposed by Charles Darwin, many people feared that it would undermine religious beliefs and disrupt societal norms. This fear of the unknown led to widespread resistance to the idea, even in the face of mounting evidence supporting it. Similarly, new technologies, such as artificial intelligence or genetic engineering, often face opposition due to the fear of their potential consequences, even though they offer vast potential for progress and discovery. In these cases, fear of the unknown leads to intellectual paralysis, where the potential for growth and innovation is stifled by anxiety and uncertainty. Fear can also manifest as social pressure, where the desire to conform to societal norms or expectations limits our intellectual freedom. In many social and academic circles, there is pressure to adhere to established beliefs or to avoid challenging the status quo. This fear of social ostracism or criticism can prevent individuals from voicing unconventional opinions or exploring new ideas. In educational environments, for example, students may be hesitant to question the professor's teachings or present alternative viewpoints out of fear of being judged or ridiculed. In this way, fear of social rejection or criticism can limit intellectual exploration and discourage creative thinking. At a larger societal level, fear can lead to censorship and the suppression of ideas. Throughout history, fear of dissent and political opposition has led to the silencing of intellectuals, artists, and activists who challenge dominant ideologies. The fear of losing control, of being overthrown or challenged, can lead to the suppression of new ideas and innovations. In authoritarian regimes, for example, fear-driven censorship is often used to prevent the spread of ideas that could undermine the government's power. This stifles intellectual freedom and curtails the potential for progress, as individuals are forced to conform to a narrow set of beliefs and ideas. Ultimately, fear, when left unchecked, can act as a powerful force that limits intellectual exploration. While it is natural to feel fear in the face of the unknown, when that fear becomes chronic, it can prevent us from stepping outside our comfort zones, embracing new ideas, and challenging our existing beliefs. Fear-driven biases, prejudices, resistance to failure, and the fear of the unknown all contribute to intellectual stagnation, where growth is hindered and new ideas are suppressed. To truly engage in intellectual exploration, we must confront these fears head-on, push beyond our limitations, and embrace the discomfort that comes with stepping into the unknown. Only then can we unlock our full potential and foster a culture of creativity, critical thinking, and intellectual freedom. Throughout history, fear has been a driving force behind human evolution, shaping not just our survival instincts, but also the intellectual capabilities that have allowed us to adapt, innovate, and thrive. The philosopher Albert Carrico proposed a fascinating theory that fear is integral to the development of human intelligence. According to Carrico, fear is not merely an emotional response to danger, but a profound motivator that has pushed humanity toward cognitive evolution. It is through fear that our ancestors were compelled to develop new ways of thinking, communicate more effectively, and create tools and strategies that enabled them to survive and overcome challenges. This concept challenges the conventional view of fear as solely a hindrance, suggesting instead that it has played a central role in shaping human progress, particularly in the realm of intellectual development. Fear, when understood through the lens of evolutionary biology, can be seen as a fundamental mechanism that shaped the course of human history. The earliest humans, like all animals, faced constant threats from predators, natural disasters, and the harsh environment. In response to these threats, early humans developed survival strategies. These strategies required the use of their intellectual capacities, forcing them to think critically and creatively to solve problems related to survival. Fear, in this context, acted as a catalyst for the development of these cognitive abilities. In the early stages of human evolution, survival was the top priority. The basic instincts of fight or flight were essential to protect early humans from immediate dangers. However, these survival instincts were not enough on their own. In order to thrive, humans had to develop more complex ways of responding to their environment, and fear played a crucial role in this process. The constant presence of danger created a need for innovation, whether it was the development of tools to hunt more effectively, or the creation of shelter to protect against the elements. Fear of not surviving or being vulnerable to attack spurred the development of intelligence in ways that might otherwise have been unnecessary. One of the earliest examples of this can be seen in the development of language. Language is one of the most significant cognitive advancements in human history, and it emerged in part as a response to fear. Early humans needed to communicate with one another to ensure group survival. The fear of predators, the fear of starvation, or the fear of territorial conflict required humans to share information quickly and effectively. This need for communication led to the development of more complex social structures and language. Early humans likely developed rudimentary forms of communication, such as gestures or vocalizations, to warn each other of impending danger or to coordinate group efforts in hunting or gathering. Over time, these basic forms of communication evolved into more sophisticated language systems that allowed humans to express ideas, share knowledge, and organize their communities. As human societies grew and became more complex, fear continued to drive intellectual advancements. The development of tools, for example, was directly influenced by the need to protect oneself from predators or to hunt for food. Early humans were afraid of being attacked by wild animals, so they created weapons such as spears, arrows, and knives to defend themselves. The fear of not having enough food to survive pushed humans to develop tools for farming and food preservation. Over time, these early tools and strategies evolved into the technologies we rely on today. Fear was not just an emotional reaction, but a driver of cognitive innovation, pushing humans to think outside the box and create solutions to meet their needs. The development of human intelligence also had to contend with the challenges posed by the environment. Early humans lived in diverse and often hostile environments, where fear of natural disasters, climate change, or territorial competition could have dire consequences. In response to these fears, early humans developed strategies for predicting and adapting to changes in their environment. This might include the development of early forms of agriculture, where humans learned to plant crops and raise livestock in response to the fear of unpredictable weather patterns. Similarly, the fear of conflict between tribes or groups led to the creation of more complex social structures and the development of systems for governance and cooperation. As human societies became more advanced, so too did the intellectual challenges humans faced. Fear continued to influence the development of intelligence, particularly in the context of problem-solving and innovation. The emergence of agriculture, for example, was a monumental shift in human history that was largely driven by the need to secure a stable food supply. Early humans feared the instability of hunting and gathering, which relied heavily on the availability of wild animals and plants. The ability to grow crops and domesticate animals allowed humans to settle in one place, leading to the creation of permanent villages and, eventually, cities. This transformation required new ways of thinking about the land, resources, and labor, and it was driven by the fear of scarcity and the need for survival. The fear of scarcity, particularly in relation to food and resources, played a significant role in the development of early civilizations. Ancient societies, such as the Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and Mayans, faced the constant threat of famine and resource depletion, and their fear of these dangers led to the creation of complex systems for resource management. These societies developed irrigation systems, built large granaries to store food, and implemented tax systems to ensure that resources were distributed fairly. Fear of famine and the collapse of society pushed humans to create innovative solutions that laid the foundation for the growth of advanced civilizations. In more modern times, the role of fear in shaping human intelligence remains evident. During times of war or conflict, fear can drive intellectual advancements in technology and strategy. For example, during World War II, the fear of losing the war to the Axis powers motivated the rapid development of new technologies, such as radar, jet engines, and the atomic bomb. The fear of technological inferiority spurred nations to invest heavily in scientific research, leading to breakthroughs that reshaped the world. Similarly, the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union was fueled by the fear of losing technological supremacy. This fear led to the rapid development of space exploration technologies and advancements in computer science, ultimately culminating in the successful moon landing in 1969. The way fear shapes our decision-making in modern times is also influenced by the long history of fear-driven cognitive development. Fear remains a central component in human psychology, and our ability to make decisions in the face of fear has evolved over millennia. Today, fear continues to drive innovation and intellectual progress in fields such as medicine, engineering, and artificial intelligence. The fear of diseases, for example, has driven the development of vaccines, medical treatments, and public health strategies that have saved millions of lives. The fear of environmental destruction has prompted efforts to develop sustainable energy sources, reduce carbon emissions, and protect biodiversity. However, while fear has undeniably driven intellectual progress, it is important to recognize that it has also shaped our decision-making in more complex and sometimes problematic ways. For example, fear can lead to irrational decisions, as people may overestimate risks or act impulsively in the face of perceived threats. In some cases, fear can cause people to reject evidence-based solutions or ignore the long-term consequences of their actions. The fear of change, for instance, can lead to resistance to new ideas or technological advancements, as people fear the unknown and cling to familiar ways of thinking. This resistance to change can stifle innovation and prevent societies from addressing the challenges they face in a timely and effective manner. Nevertheless, the evolution of human intelligence has been deeply influenced by fear. From the earliest days of human existence, fear has driven us to think, innovate, and adapt. It has forced us to confront the challenges of survival, pushing us to develop language, tools, and strategies that have shaped the course of history. Fear, despite its negative connotations, has been a vital part of the intellectual progress that has allowed humans to overcome adversity and create a better future. As we continue to face new challenges in the modern world, fear will undoubtedly remain a driving force in shaping the next phase of human evolution, urging us to innovate, adapt, and grow in the face of uncertainty. Friedrich Nietzsche one of the most influential philosophers of the 19th century, had a particularly distinctive view on the relationship between fear and personal growth. Unlike the common perception that fear is something to be avoided or suppressed, Nietzsche believed that fear should be confronted and used as a tool for personal transformation and intellectual elevation. He proposed that instead of fearing fear itself, individuals should embrace it as an essential part of the human experience and use it as a catalyst for growth. Nietzsche's philosophy, especially his concept of the will to power, provides a profound framework for understanding how fear can be harnessed for personal development and intellectual advancement. Nietzsche's will to power is central to his view of fear and its role in human evolution. At its core, the will to power is the fundamental drive within every individual to overcome obstacles, transcend limitations, and assert oneself in the world. Nietzsche argued that this drive is the primary motivating force behind human actions, more fundamental than the will to survive or the pursuit of pleasure. Fear, in this context, becomes something that challenges us, something to confront in order to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. Instead of seeing fear as a negative force that inhibits progress, Nietzsche viewed it as an opportunity to strengthen our will to power. For Nietzsche, overcoming fear was not simply a matter of avoiding the sources of fear, but actively engaging with them. He believed that humans have the capacity to transform fear into a force for personal empowerment. To truly develop, individuals must confront their fears head-on, not run from them. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, these are all part of the human condition. And rather than retreating into the safety of the known, Nietzsche argued that individuals should embrace these fears and use them as stepping stones towards self-mastery. The Übermensch represents an individual who has transcended the limitations imposed by society, tradition, and fear itself. This person does not shrink from challenges or difficulties, but rather embraces them as opportunities to grow and achieve greatness. The Übermensch lives beyond conventional moralities and social norms. And Nietzsche believed that the path to becoming such an individual involves confronting one's deepest fears. The Übermensch is someone who has not only mastered the external world, but has also overcome the internal fears and limitations that would otherwise hold them back. The connection between fear and the Übermensch is clear. In order to achieve this higher state of being, one must face fear head-on and use it as fuel for personal transformation. Fear, for Nietzsche, is not something that diminishes the individual. It is something that can enhance the individual, providing the challenge necessary for personal growth. By facing fear, the individual pushes beyond the limits of their current self, evolving into someone stronger, more capable, and more intellectually advanced. In many ways, Nietzsche's philosophy offers a blueprint for how fear can be used to unlock human potential. Instead of viewing fear as an enemy to be avoided, Nietzsche suggests that we should see it as a companion on the path to greatness. This idea is particularly relevant in today's world, where fear of failure, fear of criticism, and fear of uncertainty often prevent individuals from reaching their full potential. Nietzsche's call to face fear directly can be empowering, urging people to push through the discomfort and use it as a tool for personal transformation. Consider the example of an artist who fears rejection of their work. This fear can be paralyzing, causing the artist to second-guess their creativity and avoid putting their work out into the world. Nietzsche's philosophy would encourage the artist to confront that fear head-on, to embrace the possibility of rejection as part of the creative process, not as something to be feared. By putting their work out there, the artist engages with their fear, asserts their will to power, and uses the fear of rejection to fuel their desire to create something new and innovative. In doing so, they not only overcome their fear, but also grow intellectually and emotionally, as the experience pushes them beyond their previous limitations. Similarly, Nietzsche's philosophy can be applied to those facing personal challenges in their professional lives. For example, an entrepreneur who fears failure may hesitate to take risks or innovate within their business. The fear of financial ruin or being seen as unsuccessful may hold them back from pursuing bold ideas or new ventures. Nietzsche would argue that the entrepreneur's fear should not be seen as a barrier, but as a motivator. By facing the fear of failure directly, they can transcend the limitations imposed by their anxieties and take calculated risks that could lead to greater success. The act of confronting fear becomes an expression of their will to power, a way to assert themselves in the world and achieve their goals. Nietzsche's concept of fear as an opportunity for growth also extends to the intellectual realm. In academic settings, students and scholars often face fears related to their performance, ideas, and contributions. The fear of being wrong, of making mistakes, or of being judged by peers can inhibit the flow of creative and critical thinking. Nietzsche would suggest that these fears should not deter the individual from expressing their thoughts and ideas. Instead, they should embrace the discomfort of being wrong, knowing that the process of engaging with ideas, challenging assumptions, and correcting mistakes is essential for intellectual growth. Fear of being wrong is part of the intellectual journey, and overcoming it can lead to deeper insights and a more refined understanding of the world. Nietzsche also emphasized the importance of self-overcoming, the process of continuously striving to surpass one's current self. This is deeply connected to the role of fear in intellectual and personal growth. Fear can often arise when we approach new challenges or unfamiliar territories. It signals that we are about to push beyond our current boundaries, and in this sense, it can be seen as an invitation to evolve. Nietzsche believed that the process of self-overcoming involves confronting fear, not as something to be avoided, but as something to be embraced. Every time we face a fear and move through it, we are transcending our current limitations, becoming stronger, more capable, and more intellectually sophisticated. For Nietzsche, the will to power is not just about exerting control over the external world, but about mastering oneself, overcoming internal fears, doubts, and limitations. This process of self-mastery is essential for personal growth, and fear is a crucial part of it. Fear signals areas of our lives where we have room to grow, where we can push ourselves beyond our comfort zones and achieve greater intellectual, emotional, and personal heights. By confronting fear directly, we not only overcome external obstacles, but also master our inner selves, growing into individuals who are more capable of navigating the complexities of life. In a modern context, Nietzsche's view of fear can be incredibly empowering. In a world that often tells us to avoid fear, to play it safe, and to protect ourselves from failure, Nietzsche's philosophy encourages us to engage with fear, to use it as a tool for growth. Whether in our personal lives, our careers, or our intellectual pursuits, fear is something that should be confronted, not avoided. The process of confronting fear, of pushing through discomfort, is where true personal transformation occurs. By embracing fear and using it as a catalyst for change, we can overcome the limitations that hold us back, reaching new levels of intellectual sophistication and personal empowerment. Nietzsche's perspective on fear challenges us to rethink how we approach the difficulties and challenges we face. Rather than seeing fear as something to be feared, we can view it as an opportunity to evolve, to push the boundaries of what we thought possible, and to achieve greatness. Fear, in Nietzsche's view, is not an obstacle, but a powerful tool for transformation. When we confront it, we assert our will to power and take another step toward becoming the best version of ourselves intellectually, emotionally, and personally. By embracing fear, we transcend our limitations and unlock our full potential. Fear, when viewed through the lens of history, has been a powerful motivator for intellectual advancements and innovations. Far from merely a limiting factor, fear has often spurred individuals and societies to push the boundaries of what was previously thought possible. The human response to fear, whether it be the fear of failure, fear of the unknown, or fear of obsolescence, has led to groundbreaking discoveries, technological revolutions, and societal progress. By embracing fear, many innovators were able to transcend their limitations, overcome tremendous obstacles, and contribute to the evolution of human knowledge. One of the most striking examples of fear driving innovation can be seen in the history of scientific discoveries. Take, for instance, the story of Nicholas Copernicus and his heliocentric model of the solar system. Copernicus feared the consequences of challenging the established geocentric view of the universe, which placed Earth at the center, a belief that had been deeply entrenched for centuries. The Catholic Church, which held significant power at the time, had aligned its teachings with the Ptolemaic model, and to suggest otherwise would have meant defying not just scientific consensus, but religious doctrine. Copernicus, aware of the fear he would instill in religious and political authorities, hesitated to publish his findings for years. Despite this, the fear of intellectual stagnation, coupled with his growing recognition of the flaws in the existing model, eventually led him to release his work. The publication of his heliocentric theory in the early 16th century set off a chain reaction of scientific inquiry, challenging long-held beliefs and sparking the Renaissance's intellectual revolution. While fear initially delayed Copernicus's actions, it ultimately motivated him to challenge the status quo, and his courage to face this fear opened the door for future scientists like Galileo and Kepler to further develop our understanding of the universe. Similarly, the story of the acceptance of evolution provides another powerful example of how fear can lead to scientific progress. When Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species in 1859, his theory of natural selection directly contradicted the religious explanations of the origins of life that dominated Western thought at the time. Darwin, a devout Christian, was acutely aware of the fear and backlash his theory would generate. He feared the potential social and religious upheaval that might follow, as his ideas called into question the very foundation of creationist beliefs. Despite his reservations and fears, Darwin pressed forward, knowing that his observations and evidence from years of research could not be ignored. His fear of remaining silent in the face of scientific truth ultimately led him to publish, and the resulting work revolutionized biology. Darwin's courage to confront the fear of rejection and religious condemnation forever changed how humans view themselves and their place in the natural world. Fear, in this case, pushed Darwin to present a theory that challenged conventional thinking and spurred a global shift in the scientific understanding of life on Earth. The impact of fear on technological innovation is equally profound. Consider the rapid advancements made during the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union in the mid-20th century. The fear of technological inferiority and geopolitical domination drove both superpowers to push the boundaries of what was previously thought possible in rocketry and space exploration. The fear of being left behind, particularly after the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, in 1957, triggered a sense of urgency in the United States. American scientists, engineers, and policymakers were gripped by the fear that they were falling behind in a race that could have far-reaching consequences for national security and global prestige. This fear spurred an unprecedented investment in space technology, culminating in the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon. The fear of being surpassed by their rivals led the U.S. to develop advanced technologies in space exploration, telecommunications, and materials science technologies that continue to shape our modern world. The space race, driven by a combination of fear and ambition, resulted in not just the achievement of space travel, but a slew of innovations that permeated many areas of life, from satellite communications to modern computing. In the realm of business and entrepreneurship, Fear has also been a major motivator for innovation. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, famously stated that his greatest fear was becoming irrelevant. This fear drove him to constantly push the boundaries of what was possible in technology, leading to innovations like the iPhone, iPad, and the iPod. Jobs understood that fear of obsolescence could either paralyze a person or push them to innovate. In his case, he chose the latter. His fear of the company losing its edge in the tech industry motivated him to rethink and revolutionize how we interact with technology. The iPhone, a product of this fear-driven innovation, not only transformed the smartphone industry, but also redefined communication, entertainment, and commerce in the 21st century. Jobs' ability to harness fear as a motivator led to some of the most significant technological breakthroughs in modern history. Likewise, in the field of medicine, fear has often driven innovations that have saved millions of lives. Consider the development of the polio vaccine by Dr. Jonas Salk. In the early 20th century, polio was a major global health threat, causing widespread fear as it paralyzed and killed thousands, particularly children. The fear of a polio epidemic, coupled with the societal pressure to find a cure, pushed Salk and his team to develop a vaccine. Despite the immense risks and fears of failure, Salk pressed on, and in 1955, his vaccine was declared safe and effective. The fear of continued outbreaks and the devastation they caused motivated one of the most significant breakthroughs in public health, effectively eradicating polio in many parts of the world and saving countless lives. The fear of a preventable disease spreading unchecked, combined with Salk's dedication, led to a medical breakthrough that is still celebrated today. In the modern era, the fear of climate change has similarly driven innovation in renewable energy and sustainability. For decades, the scientific community has sounded the alarm about the dangers of global warming, causing widespread fear about the future of the planet. This fear has prompted governments, corporations, and individuals to take action. The growing demand for clean energy solutions has led to advancements in solar power, wind energy, and electric vehicles. Companies like Tesla, driven in part by the fear of environmental degradation, have pushed the boundaries of electric car technology, making electric vehicles more accessible and practical for the mass market. This fear of environmental collapse has spurred a wave of innovation in green technology. Fear has been a powerful motivator in the creative arts. Take the example of J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series. Rowling, at the time a single mother struggling with financial instability, feared her writing would never be accepted or published. Her fear of failure, of never achieving her dreams, was immense. However, this fear drove her to persevere, leading her to complete the manuscript for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. After numerous rejections from publishers, Rowling's book was finally accepted, and it went on to become one of the best-selling book series of all time. Her fear of failure pushed her to work harder, to refine her writing, and to keep going even when it seemed like success was out of reach. The result was not only personal success, but the creation of a cultural phenomenon that has influenced generations of readers and inspired films, plays, and a global community of fans. The examples throughout history and in modern times illustrate a powerful truth. Fear is not merely something to be feared or avoided. It is often the spark that ignites innovation, pushing individuals and societies to break through intellectual, technological, and creative barriers. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of being left behind, these are all powerful motivators that have led to some of humanity's most significant breakthroughs. From Copernicus challenging the established view of the universe to the development of life-saving vaccines and modern technology, fear has spurred curiosity, inspired perseverance, and fueled intellectual progress. The key is not to let fear paralyze us, but to harness it, using it as a driving force to create, innovate, and advance. Fear, in its many forms, continues to shape the world we live in and will undoubtedly play a role in the innovations of tomorrow. Fear is an emotion that many of us try to avoid or suppress, often viewing it as a barrier that holds us back from reaching our true potential. But what if we reframed fear as something not to be feared but embraced? Something that drives us forward instead of hindering our progress? Fear, when understood and confronted head-on, can be a powerful force for intellectual advancement. It is not merely an obstacle. It is a signal that we are about to stretch the limits of our knowledge and capabilities. The key lies in how we respond to fear. If we can learn to harness it effectively, fear becomes a catalyst for growth rather than a hindrance. To truly overcome fear and use it to foster intellectual growth, there are several strategies we can implement. The first step is acknowledging fear rather than trying to ignore or deny it. Fear often arises when we encounter something new, unknown, or challenging. It is a natural response to stepping out of our comfort zones and facing intellectual or personal growth. Whether it's taking on a new project, learning a difficult concept, or expressing an unpopular opinion, fear can serve as an indicator that we are pushing boundaries. Acknowledging this fear allows us to accept that it is a part of the process and not something to shy away from. It's crucial to recognize that fear, in many cases, is a sign that we are on the right track, that we are about to engage with something important that will expand our thinking. One of the most effective ways to overcome fear is to reframe it. Instead of viewing fear as a threat or something to avoid, we can reframe it as an opportunity for growth. This shift in perspective is key to overcoming the limiting effects that fear can have on our intellectual progress. Fear often arises because we are uncertain or unfamiliar with what lies ahead. However, this uncertainty can be the breeding ground for innovation, creativity, and new ideas. By reframing fear as an opportunity to expand our minds, we can approach challenges with curiosity and excitement rather than dread. Take, for example, a student who fears taking on a difficult subject in school. The fear might stem from a lack of confidence or the belief that they won't be able to understand the material. Instead of allowing this fear to paralyze them, the student could reframe it as an opportunity to stretch their intellectual abilities. The challenge of learning something new becomes not a burden to avoid but a chance to grow, to develop new skills, and to deepen their understanding. By shifting the focus from the fear of failure to the potential for learning and growth, the student can overcome the fear and embrace the challenge with a more positive and proactive mindset. Reframing fear also involves recognizing that failure is an inevitable and necessary part of the learning process. Many of us fear failure, but it's important to understand that failure is not a reflection of our worth or intelligence. It is simply a part of the path toward success. Failure, when approached with the right mindset, becomes a learning experience rather than a setback. Every failure provides valuable lessons and insights that can guide us toward better strategies and solutions. The fear of failure can be paralyzing, but it can also be the driving force behind greater success if we learn to embrace it. For example, consider the story of Thomas Edison, the renowned inventor who famously failed thousands of times before successfully inventing the electric light bulb. Edison faced countless setbacks, but rather than seeing them as failures, he viewed each one as a step closer to success. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's ability to reframe his failures as opportunities for learning and improvement allowed him to continue working toward his goal despite the many obstacles he faced. In this way, failure became a powerful tool for intellectual growth, helping him refine his ideas and eventually revolutionize the world with his inventions. Embracing failure as part of the learning process is essential not only for personal development, but also for intellectual advancement. Fear often holds us back from taking risks or trying new things because we are afraid of failing. But by changing our perception of failure, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and learning opportunities. Fear of failure can be transformed into motivation by understanding that failure is a temporary setback, not a permanent state. Each failure is an opportunity to reevaluate, reassess, and refine our approach. In this way, failure becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block, and fear of it no longer has the power to hold us back. Another strategy for overcoming fear and fostering intellectual growth is to create a supportive environment that encourages exploration and risk-taking. Often, fear arises when we feel isolated or unsupported in our intellectual pursuits. The fear of being judged, ridiculed, or rejected can be stifling, and it can prevent us from engaging with new ideas or challenging our own beliefs. Surrounding ourselves with a community of like-minded individuals who support intellectual exploration can help mitigate this fear, whether it's a group of peers, mentors, or colleagues. Having a support system that encourages open dialogue, creative thinking, and the sharing of ideas can create an environment where fear is less likely to dominate. For example, in academic settings, students who feel supported by their teachers and peers are more likely to take intellectual risks and explore new areas of knowledge. They are less likely to be paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes because they know they are part of a community that values learning and growth rather than perfection. Similarly, in the workplace, employees who work in a culture that fosters innovation and rewards experimentation are more likely to push boundaries and propose new ideas. A supportive environment reduces the fear of failure by emphasizing growth, collaboration, and resilience. One of the most powerful ways to overcome fear is by taking small, incremental steps toward the feared challenge. Often, the thought of tackling a major intellectual hurdle can feel overwhelming, leading to procrastination or avoidance. However, breaking down the challenge into smaller, manageable tasks can make it feel more achievable. By taking small steps, we can build confidence, reduce anxiety, and gradually desensitize ourselves to the fear. With each small success, we build momentum and gain the courage to tackle larger challenges. For example, a writer who fears the task of completing a novel may find it daunting to face a blank page. However, by breaking the task into smaller goals, such as writing a single chapter or even just a few paragraphs each day, the fear of the overwhelming task diminishes. With each small step, the writer gains confidence and momentum, eventually completing the larger project. This approach not only helps overcome fear, but also cultivates a sense of accomplishment and progress, reinforcing the idea that fear can be managed and overcome through consistent effort. Another way to overcome fear and foster intellectual growth is to embrace a growth mindset. This psychological concept, popularized by psychologist Carol Dweck, emphasizes the belief that intelligence and abilities can be developed through hard work, perseverance, and dedication. A growth mindset encourages us to view challenges and failures as opportunities to improve rather than as threats to our self-worth. When we adopt a growth mindset, we are less likely to be paralyzed by fear because we see every challenge as a chance to learn and grow. For instance, a student who believes that intelligence is fixed may shy away from difficult subjects out of fear of failure or inadequacy. However, a student with a growth mindset will approach challenges with the understanding that their abilities can be developed through effort and persistence. This mindset encourages intellectual exploration and resilience in the face of fear and difficulty, fostering greater intellectual growth over time. To overcome fear for intellectual advancement, we must embrace it as part of the learning process and view it as a tool for growth. Acknowledging fear, reframing it as an opportunity, and embracing failure are key strategies that can help us push past limitations and expand our intellectual horizons. By surrounding ourselves with supportive environments, taking small steps toward our goals, and adopting a growth mindset, we can transform fear from an obstacle into a catalyst for personal and intellectual development. Fear is not something to be avoided, but something to be confronted, understood, and ultimately used to propel us toward greater learning, innovation, and self-discovery. Through this process, we unlock the potential to achieve far more than we ever thought possible. Fear is an emotion that many people instinctively try to avoid or suppress. We often associate it with danger, discomfort, and paralysis. However, as we've explored in depth, fear doesn't always need to be something we avoid. In fact, it can be a powerful tool for intellectual growth and personal transformation. Embracing fear rather than fearing it allows us to unlock new potential, overcome limitations, and reach higher levels of cognitive and emotional development. The first key takeaway is the importance of acknowledging fear, rather than pretending it doesn't exist or ignoring its presence. Acknowledging fear is the first step toward using it to our advantage. By recognizing that fear is a natural part of the human experience, we can start to see it as an indicator of progress. Fear often arises when we're stepping into unknown territory, whether it's taking on a new project, grappling with complex ideas, or challenging old assumptions. These are precisely the moments when intellectual growth is most likely to occur. Fear signals that we are pushing boundaries, testing ourselves, and moving toward new frontiers of understanding. For instance, many of the greatest intellectual breakthroughs in history were driven by the fear of stagnation or failure. The scientists and innovators who changed the course of history didn't shy away from the fear they felt when facing new challenges. Albert Einstein, for example, faced criticism and resistance when he introduced his theory of relativity, which fundamentally changed our understanding of space and time. His fear of being wrong, or of his ideas being dismissed, was present throughout his work. But instead of allowing that fear to paralyze him, Einstein acknowledged it and used it to drive him to rigorously test and refine his theories. He embraced fear as a necessary part of the process, knowing that it was through this challenge that intellectual breakthroughs occur. Once we acknowledge fear, the next step is to reframe it. Fear can often be seen as a barrier, a wall that separates us from success or achievement. However, reframing fear as an opportunity for growth can change how we respond to it. Instead of seeing fear as something that stops us from moving forward, we can see it as a signal that we are on the verge of something important. Reframing fear in this way shifts our perspective from one of avoidance to one of embrace. When fear arises, we should ask ourselves, what is this fear trying to teach me? How can I use this feeling to push myself beyond my current limitations? Consider the example of someone learning a new skill, such as playing a musical instrument. When they first begin, they may feel fear of making mistakes, fear of performing poorly. But instead of letting this fear stop them from practicing or performing, they can reframe it as an opportunity to improve, to build resilience, and to become better at their craft. The fear of making a mistake becomes less about failure and more about the learning process. By reframing fear, the individual moves forward with a sense of curiosity and excitement, knowing that each mistake is a step closer to mastery. Another critical aspect of embracing fear as a tool for growth is confronting it directly. When we confront fear, we gain control over it rather than allowing it to control us. Fear often arises when we face challenges that are outside our comfort zone. It might manifest as anxiety before a big presentation, fear of criticism when sharing our ideas, or even the fear of failure when attempting something new. These fears are natural responses to the unknown. But instead of avoiding them, confronting them head-on allows us to expand our boundaries. Each time we face fear, we gain confidence and the ability to push through the next challenge. This idea of confronting fear is central to the philosophy of personal development. Individuals who embrace fear, who push through their discomfort, often experience the most significant intellectual and personal growth. Think of someone starting a business. The fear of failure is ever present, especially in the early stages. The entrepreneur fears that the product or service might not succeed, that customers won't buy, or that they will run out of money. But instead of allowing these fears to hold them back, the entrepreneur confronts them. They learn from their mistakes, adapt their strategies, and continue moving forward. Every fear they face becomes an opportunity for learning and growth. In intellectual pursuits, confronting fear is just as important. For students, researchers, or anyone engaged in intellectual work. Fear often arises when grappling with difficult material or complex ideas. It's easy to feel intimidated by topics that are unfamiliar or seem beyond our capabilities. But rather than retreating, confronting that fear can lead to deeper understanding and insight. Fear of failure in academics often leads to procrastination or avoidance. However, those who confront their fears by tackling the most difficult tasks head-on often experience the greatest intellectual growth. By diving into challenging material rather than avoiding it, they expand their minds and build confidence in their ability to handle complex problems. One example of confronting fear for intellectual growth can be seen in the history of medicine. When doctors and scientists first began studying the human body, they faced immense fears: fear of disease, fear of failure, and even fear of stepping into uncharted medical territory. However, it was this confrontation with fear that led to significant advances in medical science. The discovery of penicillin by Alexander Fleming, for instance, was not just the result of scientific curiosity, but also the result of confronting the fear of diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. By embracing the fear of disease and death, Fleming's discovery revolutionized the treatment of bacterial infections and saved countless lives. Fear, when acknowledged, reframed, and confronted, becomes a powerful force for intellectual advancement. But there is one more element to truly harnessing fear for growth: perseverance. In the face of fear, it's easy to become discouraged, to think that failure is inevitable or that progress is unattainable. However, persistence in the face of fear is often the key to overcoming it. Every time we confront fear, we learn something new about ourselves and our capabilities. Each time we push through fear, we build mental toughness and resilience, traits that are crucial for continued growth. This is where the idea of perseverance comes into play. Perseverance is not just about sticking with something until the end, it's about continuing to push forward, even when fear threatens to halt progress. Take the example of someone pursuing a PhD. The road is long, the material is difficult, and the pressure to succeed can be overwhelming. The fear of failure and inadequacy is common. However, it is those who persist in the face of that fear who continue to write, research, and learn despite setbacks that ultimately achieve success. They understand that fear is just part of the journey, and by persevering, they're not only advancing their knowledge, but also strengthening their ability to tackle future challenges. Fear can also serve as a valuable tool in the creative process. Artists, writers, musicians, and other creators often face the fear of rejection or the fear that their work will not be appreciated. These fears can hold them back from sharing their work or pushing the boundaries of their creativity. But when artists confront these fears, they often produce their most profound and innovative work. It is the fear of imperfection that drives many artists to refine their craft, to experiment with new ideas, and to express themselves in ways that challenge the norms of their time. Creative individuals who embrace fear and use it to fuel their artistic expression are often the ones who change the cultural landscape and redefine what is possible within their fields. In many ways, embracing fear as a tool for growth is about changing how we view challenges. Instead of seeing them as obstacles that stand in our way, we can view them as opportunities to grow intellectually and personally. Fear is not something that needs to be feared. It is simply a signpost on the path to greater knowledge and self-understanding. By acknowledging fear, reframing it, confronting it, and persisting in the face of it, we unlock the potential for tremendous intellectual and personal growth. Fear doesn't have to paralyze us, it can propel us forward. By learning to embrace fear as a necessary part of the learning process, we can move beyond our limitations, confront the unknown with confidence, and continue to expand the boundaries of our intellect. Fear is not a roadblock. It is a stepping stone to greater achievement. Whether in the realm of science, business, or personal development, fear is the signal that we are pushing the limits of what we know and can achieve. It's time to embrace fear, to see it as a guide, and to use it as a tool to unlock the full potential of our intellect and creativity. Through this process, we become not only more knowledgeable, but more resilient, more capable, and ultimately more powerful in our pursuit of growth. So there you have it. Fear is not the enemy we often think. It's a powerful ally that can propel us to new intellectual heights and personal growth. By acknowledging it, reframing it as an opportunity, and confronting it head-on, you can unlock doors to your full potential. Every time you face fear, you're growing, evolving, and expanding your intellectual boundaries. I want to leave you with this thought. Fear is not something that limits us. It's something that challenges us to become the best version of ourselves. Every great thinker, inventor, and creator faced fear at some point. The difference is that they didn't let it stop them, they used it to fuel their progress. And so can you. If you're ready to start embracing fear and turning it into your secret weapon, then don't forget to like this video, share it with anyone who might need to hear this, and of course, subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Also, if you found value in this video and want to support the channel further, a super thanks goes a long way in helping us keep making content that empowers and inspires. Remember, fear is not your enemy. It's your partner in growth. Start facing it and watch yourself transform into someone who not only thrives in the face of fear, but embraces it as a necessary step to greatness. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.